Hey everyone, good evening and welcome to another episode in Adventures of Comprehension. So excited for you to be here tonight. I've got a great session for us. So you're going to want to make sure you grab a drink, grab a seat, and stay tuned because tonight we're going to be talking all about goal setting. That's right. This is a topic that I get asked about a lot from teachers, and it was requested as a Facebook Live. So I thought, why not? So tonight we're going to be talking all about goal setting tips and tricks, things that you can use and information that you need to help make sure that you are setting meaningful goals. Whoop, grab some hair there. Meaningful goals with your students in the classroom. So, my name is Sierra Harris. I am the author behind Sierra Harris Teaching, and I'm super excited to talk with you every week about everything that has to do with comprehension. And you're probably thinking, well, goal setting can be used for more than just reading comprehension. And that's absolutely right. So, yes, tonight's topic can apply to every area that we teach outside of comprehension, but it does apply. So I thought, why not? This is something that we all need to hear and talk about before we head back to school in the fall. And it's really important and vital information. So that's why we're going to be talking about it tonight. So, all right, if you have not already done so, make sure that you comment below and let me know that you're here. Say hi, drop me a comment and say what grade you teach and where you're from. And let me know, is goal setting something that you do in your classroom? I know for the first probably 4 or 5 years in my classroom, I didn't goal set with kids. I didn't really even know that was a thing. And then when I finally got trained and understood the power behind it and was able to fail a lot, setting a lot of goals the incorrect way, which we'll talk about tonight, and I was able to really figure it out and harness the power of goal setting. So hopefully some of the things that I share with you tonight are going to be helpful and impactful and get you off on the right track and maybe steer you clear of some mistakes that I made along the way. So tonight we're going to be digging into 10 different tips. So I've got 10 different pieces of information that I would like to share with you. So if you have a note page handy, you might want to take some notes. I do also have a great freebie for you, and I'm going to be showcasing some of those pages as we talk tonight and show you what they are and how you can use them. So I will provide the link to the freebies in the video description and in the comments at the end of the video. So obviously if you're watching the replay, the link may already be there and you can grab it. If you're live, you're going to have to wait until the end when I'm done talking and I can get that up there for you. So no worries there. But it's a fantastic freebie tonight. It's huge. So you're going to love it. So are we ready? Are we ready to chat? Okay. I'm so excited. So let's talk first, before I jump into my number one, let's talk a little bit about the history of why goal setting is so important. I have conversations on a daily with teachers who are frustrated with students when it comes to things like motivation, engagement, accountability, responsibility. Do those terms ring a bell? Yeah, we've all been there. We all have our frustrations with students just not putting the oomph behind their learning that we know and want them to have. So how can we change that? Well, goal setting, honestly. Goal setting is one of the ways that we can help try to kind of shift the focus in our classroom to individualize goals for students. And so when you think about a student having a goal in front of them, it's kind of like that, metaphor of the carrot in front of the horse or the donkey, right? It's going to be that thing that keeps them moving forward. And so as we walk through some of the steps and tips tonight, you're going to see why and how that is true, right? So goal setting helps to motivate your students. It helps get that, that level of impact and that level of engagement a lot higher. And it makes learning a little bit more meaningful, a lot more meaningful actually for those students. So lots of different reasons why we should be doing this. And so let's dive into how. How are we going to make this work for us? So number one is very important, is to model for your students. Yes, I know I say that a lot when it comes to when we're teaching reading comprehension, right? That we should be modeling our thinking. But what I mean by this is actually modeling goal setting for your students. Goal setting is a very foreign concept, right? Even if you teach fourth, fifth, sixth grade, they may not have exposure to goal setting. So we want to make this more of a black and white concept for them, right? We wanted to expose them as much as possible. And so that means we need to model it for them. And that doesn't mean I'm asking you to create your own academic goals for yourself, right? We want to make it realistic as well. So it's about the thinking process that kind of goes behind the goal setting. So you want to model setting goals, that things that you actually have goals for in your everyday life. Maybe you have a goal of getting, all the spelling tests graded, by the end of the day. Then communicate that with your kids. Maybe you have a goal of trying to get to your kids' soccer practice on time because you have, 5 places and 5 different errands that you have to stop and you've got a meeting after school. And so you kind of walk them through the process of, okay, so these are the action steps that I'm going to take to try to meet this goal. And so basically what we're wanting to do is show them the value of goal setting, to show them that this is a natural and, very important habit that we're trying to build in them, and that this isn't something that we're just going to do inside our 4 walls. This is something that you are going to do even when you're older, and it's really important. So we want to give them lots of examples. We want to give them lots of exposure to goal setting. Rather than just throw them in and say, hey, let's set a goal, make sure that you're communicating your own goals with your students, right? So modeling piece and that constant communication and exposure is really what's going to help them when you ask them to set a goal themselves, okay? All right, so that was number 1. Number 2 is to set goals daily. Set goals daily, right? This may be a scary thing to think about if your mind immediately goes towards the big goals. And a lot of teachers kind of have that concept of, when I set goals for my kids, they're big, long-term goals. And those goals are fine. And we're actually going to talk about that in just a second. But you want to make sure that your kids are thinking about what they want out of a lesson or what they want out of the day on a daily basis, right? You don't want to just throw long-term goals at them. You want to show them the power of this habit, and that setting goals is purposeful and that it can increase their engagement, okay? So here's a very easy example. Let's say that you are in the middle of a vocabulary lesson. And so as a class, you set a goal for picking one of the vocab words for the week. And you say that at the end of the 15 minutes, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that all of our students can understand the definition of this one vocabulary word, right? That's a goal. And that's going to increase all of your engagement because it's all putting accountability on everyone's shoulders. Another easy example. Let's say you're in a center and you're having them do task cards in math or grammar or whatever. And on the corner of their recording sheet, you say, okay, I want you to set a goal of how many task cards you think you can get done in the 15 minutes that you have for your station today. Write that number at the top in the corner and circle it. That's your goal. What's that going to do for your students, right? Is that going to get them focused? Most likely. Is that going to make them want to meet that goal? Yeah. Is it going to make them want to surpass it and show you that they can do better? Yeah. It's all about the power of persuasion, kind of in a way, but with a goal-setting twist. So there are lots of different ways that you can set goals on a daily basis to show them the power behind goal setting. Because with students not having any familiarity, I can never say that word correctly, with goal setting, if you throw them into the deep end and try to set a goal, they're not going to understand the power behind it. They're not going to understand the gratification. They're not going to know, what and how this is going to do for them. But if we can goal set daily and show them, like, you met this goal. You did it because you were motivated. You did it because you had your eye on the prize, right? It was that finish line. Sometimes our kids need a concrete finish line to be able to make it through a lesson or to be able to make it through a day. And we have to try to give them those finish lines, that black and white finish line to cross to say, I did it. I accomplished my goal. I am proud of myself. I can do this. So by setting goals daily, that's an easy way to have that happen. And then it sets you up more for success when you're setting actual reading goals with your kids later on, okay? All right, so number three. Number three is long-term versus short-term. So I mentioned just a second ago that, when I say to goal set daily, that a lot of teachers go, what? And that's because their mind immediately jumps to long-term goals. And I think long-term goals have merit. They really do. So what I mean by long-term goals is, for example, you want a student to be at a certain guided reading level by the end of the semester. Or maybe you set a goal with a kid and you want them to learn X number of sight words by the end of the month, right? That's a long time span to think about. And so those are your more long-term goals. We also need to make sure that we are setting short-term goals with our students. So yes, this does include the daily goals, but you want to make sure that you're setting short-term goals individually with your students as well, okay? You want to make sure there's a balance between both. And the reason why goes back to the G word, gratification. We're teaching our kids that gratification is that intrinsic motivation and power and confidence that we feel in ourselves when we have met our goal. And so, if I set a goal in August with a student to be at a certain reading level by December, do you think they're going to remember that goal? Do you think they're going to care about that goal in October? Are you, as the teacher, going to care about that goal? Or remember that you had that goal set in October, right? That may be a long-term goal that you want to set, but let's set some short-term goals that are more achievable in a shorter time frame to get your student understanding and feeling that gratification and to know the power, okay? So you keep your students' motivation with the short-term goals and you have the long-term goals set for, the bigger picture, the big eye on the prize kind of thing. So maybe an example of a short-term goal would be the end of the week on my comprehension tests, I want to try to get an 85%. That's an easy goal, right? So now they can see every week that the action steps that they do to meet that goal are working or are not working, or what changes do we need to make. Plus, my short-term goals is connected to my long-term goals, right? So it breaks it kind of all down into things that are going to keep me more motivated and keep my eye on the big prize for the end of the year, but then also keep my eye on the prize of something that I know that I'm going to know whether or not I met the goal in a shorter time frame, okay? So it's all about the balance. Short-term goals, long-term goals. We've got to have both, right? Got to give them gratification. We've got to let them know that what they're doing is working or what they're doing is not working and we need to change course, or we need to make a new goal, or we need to change our action steps. So that's very important. All right, number 4, we're talking about all things goal setting. Number 4 is all about guiding questions. So now we're actually getting into the nitty-gritty of, okay, so I understand the importance of goal setting. I know that this is something I want to do with my kids. I know this is something that I need to model. I know I need to make sure that I've got a balance between long-term and short-term. So now, okay, I want to set goals. So I want to sit down with my students and I want to set a goal for them. So what happens? What do I do? What do I say? How do I get them started, right? All those questions come to mind. Well, one of the things I want to make sure I mention is to make sure that you never set the goal for the student, right? These are not our goals. These are the students' goals. So for them to have buy-in to that goal, they need to be the one to see it and say it. It needs to come from them, right? Think about yourself. If somebody tells you to do something, are you more or less motivated to do it than if you were the one to come up with the idea and do it, right? You're more motivated if it comes from you. So that has to come from the student. Now, we all know that the students don't know what kind of goal they think they should have, right? We know that we have a better idea of possible goals than they probably do. So how do we merge my intellect and my know-how of goal setting and data with the student's understanding? So it all goes back to that power of what I like to call persuasive questioning. So this is where one of your freebies comes in tonight. So I have made for you what is called a guiding question goal setting matrix. And so what this does is it helps you create questions to guide students to setting meaningful goals based off of your student's initial response. So have you ever tried to sit down with a student and set a goal and they say, I want to be a better reader? Well, great. That's a fantastic goal. Let's just work on comprehension, right? You want to be a better reader. Readers need to understand what they read. So let's work on comprehension, right? That's what we end up doing because we don't know how to go from this big statement that the student made to something more concrete and actionable and measurable that we can actually have as a goal. So how do we get from there to there? That's where the matrix comes in. So at the top here, in like the grayish area, it would be gray if it was on white paper because I made mine orange. But at the top there are your big broad statements that students like to have or like to say during goal setting conferences. They say things like, I want to be a better reader. I want to be good at math. I want to get good grades. Right? What student hasn't said that? I want to be a good speller and I want to get a higher guided reading level. So those are like the main big questions. So then underneath each one are guiding questions that the teacher can ask to help kind of narrow down the conversation. So back to the I want to be a better reader. You could say things like, what makes you think you're not a good reader? The student may sit and think about that for a second and respond with, well, I get stuck on the big words. There's a lot of big words when I read and I don't know how to say them. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, you know what? I notice that sometimes too, and that's okay. That means we're ready for those big words and that we're training our brain how to break those up and read them. Do you know what that's called when we come to those big words? And then, of course, we tell them. So this could lead into maybe a decoding goal. Maybe it could lead into a fluency goal, but it's coming from the student. So then you would kind of guide them again through more questions to let them stumble upon the, oh, I need help with multisyllabic words, or I need help with increasing my reading fluency. And so through questioning, you guide them to that aha moment. And so there are lots of questions like that on the questioning matrix. So you can ask, well, what does a good reader do? Or what does a good reader sound like? What is a good reader doing in their head while they read? What is something that you don't feel as confident doing when you read? Or the last one, do you feel like you understand what you read? So lots of great questions underneath that one bold statement that the student would make. So it's all about using guided questions. We want to make sure that the goal comes from them, but we can guide them by questioning things that they're experiencing when they read, okay? You could even have a book in front of you and let them read a page and then use guided questions there about the experience to get them to stumble upon what just happened, okay? So again, don't create the goal for them. Let them say it. Let them have that aha moment. Use your guided questions to help narrow down. Don't take the power away from them, okay? This is one of your freebies tonight, by the way. And again, I'll post the link in the video description and the comments at the end of the video. All right, so that was number 4. We are on to number 5. Number 5 is all about data, using data to goal set. Duh, right? That's a duh one. I do want to mention it, of course, even though it is a duh, but there are some important things that I think need to be mentioned. So it's very important to have and use data when goal setting with your kids, okay? But in order to do that, your students need to understand what baseline data means. So when we look at data for a student, we know that that data is either good, meaning the student's on the right track, or it's a little, not so good, meaning the student is struggling, right? And we know that because we understand baseline data. We understand that, in grade 2, students need to be at a level this by this month. We understand that, a C is, a 70% or an 80%, whatever your grading scale is, of course. We understand all those baseline data, but your students may not know that, especially in younger grades. So if we present data to them, they're going to see this as gibberish, right? They may not understand. So one of the things that we can do, and that I encourage you to do, is to use data in visual form, okay? So if you are presenting data to your student about, their last, 6 weeks of reading assessments that you've given them, whether it be their vocabulary scores, comprehension grades, spelling grades, whatever grades you take in your reading block, you present them, and you present them in a graph format. So yes, I know that's another step, but if it allows the students to visually see and understand data better, it's going to lead to better goals, and it's going to lead to more motivation. So it makes me spend 30 minutes, after school one day coloring on bar graphs for kids. I'm going to do it. And it's meaningful, I promise you. So present the data in a graphic type way. So obviously the graphic would, depend on what level of students you're teaching. Younger grades do very well with bar graphs. Older grades, you can do, more line graphs or plot diagrams, or whatever you want to get into, right? Whatever's easiest for you and for them to understand. But what you can do is when you present them with this graph, you can then draw a line on the baseline data. You can say, here's where I want all of my students to be. And then they can look to see where they are above or below that graph. And they're going to understand that. Okay, and then they're going to be able to look at that and say, wow, I'm really doing well at my spelling and my comprehension. But man, my vocab, I might need help with vocabulary. Oh, do you think maybe that's something you would like to set a goal in? Yeah, I don't do vocab very well. I get confused on the definitions, and words are difficult for me. I don't understand what they mean a lot of times, especially those bigger words. And then it just naturally comes out in the goal setting process. So again, if you can use data in a visual way for your students, then that again will help merge the goal needs to come from them and not from you, and it's going to be more meaningful to them. Okay. Obviously, you do want to be very sensitive if you have students who are struggling, profusely. You don't want to present them with data where it's going to make them feel horrible about themselves. There are going to be cases where, visual data may not be appropriate. And I hope you know that. I know that. So please take what I'm saying is every case can be different. Maybe you want to lower the baseline data line for them. Maybe you want to present them with certain data points rather than all the data points. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. So just tread lightly and be, sensitive to all of your students and all the data that they may have. Okay. All right, so data is important. We do need to make sure we use it and use it intentionally. All right, number 6. Number 6 tip is realistic versus unrealistic goals, right? And we mentioned this earlier when we talked about our guiding questioning and the matrix that I showed you that you're getting as a freebie. But one of the things that I think is such a big aha when it comes to goal setting is the fact that students don't understand when it comes to goal setting and setting realistic goals versus unrealistic goals. To them, when they come to you and they say, I want to be a better reader, that is a realistic goal for them, right? They don't understand that that's not an obtainable, I shouldn't say not an obtainable, that that's not a measurable goal within the time frame that you want them to set the goal for, right? They don't understand that. We do, they don't. So we need to teach them this. Just as like we teach them our expectations at the beginning of the year, and we teach them the right way and the wrong way, right? When we're transitioning, this is the right way to transition, this is the wrong way to transition. When you're teaching goal setting at the beginning of the year and you know this is something you want to do, then take a lesson and spend time teaching them the difference between realistic and unrealistic goals. So part of your freebie tonight is actually an activity that you can do with your kids. So I have for you here a realistic and unrealistic goal sort activity. You can do this whole group. You can do this in small groups. Sorry, my shirt is, I have a new shirt today and just want to make sure. You can sort these based on the goals. So I have 2 whole pages of goals that come in cards like this. This is just one of the pages. Actually, there's a few more cards too that are missing. And the students then would sort them. So for example, my goal is to capitalize every sentence in writing. Realistic or unrealistic? Absolutely. Now, based on grade level, that may be an unrealistic goal for kindergarten. Maybe it's an absolutely realistic goal for 5th grade. So take your grade level obviously into consideration, but then they can sort these. So another one says, my goal is to learn 10 new sight words this month. Very much a realistic goal. An unrealistic goal would be, my goal is to get 100% on every assignment we have this week. No one's perfect, right? We're going to make mistakes. And if it was 100% on everything, that means you already learned it and you shouldn't be in this grade. Like, no, we're going to make sure that we're learning things that are new and that are challenging and growing our brain. So that is not a realistic goal. So I've got the sorting cards. I've got the headings, the headers pieces. So you've got a little hands-on activity that you can do whole group or in small groups with your kids at the beginning of the year to make sure that they understand the difference between realistic versus unrealistic. And then when they do, and when they come to you for your first goal setting conference, they're going to have that kind of foundational knowledge and be able to be on a better starting point than they would if you had not taken the time to introduce that. So that's number 6. All right, number 7 is visuals. And visuals is not what I mean when I talk about visuals when you're talking about data. What I mean by visuals is in your room somewhere, dedicate space to goal setting. Okay, this is going to be a multi-purpose visual. One, it's going to be a good visual for you to actually display students' goals that you set with your kids. Now, I do recommend doing this anonymously. Okay, if you have a goal setting page, let them decorate the border of the goal setting page and then write their name on the back and then display them anonymously. Your students are going to know which is theirs, but you're not going to have, Susie and Landon and Kennedy and Emmett's and everyone's goals all displayed for everyone to see with their names plastered on them. Do it anonymously. That way your student can be proud of the goal depending on what everyone else's goals are. Okay? And then it's in front of their face. It's a reminder for them. But then also, it's a reminder for you. Okay? If we are doing our job of setting goals with our kids, I don't want to forget that they're there, right? I don't want a month to go by and be like, oh my gosh, I haven't done goal setting conferences in a month and I completely forgot about them because the papers are, under this stack and I forgot, the kids forgot. No, that happens. I get it. But we got to make sure that we are being purposeful and intentional about it. It's only going to work if we do. So by displaying or having some kind of goal setting visual or reminder in your room, it's going to keep you accountable, hold your students accountable, and be that visual reminder that this is important to us. This is something that we hold dearly in our classroom and that we think is important and that's going to help us become better readers, become better mathematicians, become better thinkers, right? So have some kind of a visual reminder in your classroom. All right, friends, we only have 3 left. Are you ready to hear the last 3? All right, I can't wait. So number 8 is I think it's one of my most important ones. And it is action steps. So when you're setting goals with students, setting the goal sometimes may be the easy part. It's what you do after you set the goal that may be difficult. How do you get the student to actually meet the goal, right? We need to help our students by not just setting the goal, but afterwards and then creating action steps for the students and any other people involved, meaning parents, you, the teacher, who else, but creating action steps for them to take. This is like the to-do. Here's your end goal. Here's what you're going to do to get there. So one of your freebies tonight is actually an action step visual. You can easily recreate this in any form that you feel necessary. But the important part is that you have a goal set with your students and that you break down the action steps, right? So if your goal for the student is to get an 85% on their comprehension test at the end of the week, then how are they going to get there? What are they going to do? Okay, maybe they're going to make sure they're practicing looking for text evidence. Maybe they're going to practice underlining keywords in the question. Maybe they're going to, use their close reading strategies, and they're going to read the text 2 or 3 times to help with their understanding. Like, give them actionable steps that they can physically do to reach the goal. The goal is abstract. The action steps are concrete. So that is where the meat comes in, really. So make sure that when you're ready to set a goal with students, if you know you're going to use your guiding questions in a certain direction, make sure you know what those action steps are going to be too. That way you and the student can create those together to know, all right, if I'm going to work on sight words, what am I going to do? All right, well, I'm going to keep my sight words in a baggie and my book bag at all times. I'm going to practice them every night for 10 minutes before I go to bed. I'm going to, practice them with a partner every day for morning work before I start my, regular morning work. Whatever those action steps can be, let your student try to come up with them, with you, but make sure you know what some of them could be. That way you're not trying to think of them in the moment with your student, right? So use those action steps. All right, number 9 tonight is reflect and give feedback, right? Goals are only important or meaningful if we're spending time reflecting on them. Did we meet our goal? Why did we meet our goal? Maybe a great question to ask them to reflect on is their action steps. Which action step did they take that was more impactful than the others? What do you think caused them to not meet their goal? Did they not follow through on action steps? Was it too big of a goal? So the reflective process is important to goal setting because it's going to make the goals they set in the future after this goal that they're reflecting on, it's going to make that next goal even more powerful and meaningful, and maybe even more focused. So the reflection process is something that you can do independently. If your students are understand that process, you could have a goal-setting reflection form that they can fill out. You could do this together in the meeting. Like if you're holding another goal-setting meeting, you do the goal-setting and reflective process kind of all in one. That's completely up to you, but it's really important to do. And then on the other side of that, during the reflection process, it's important for you to give your feedback. Show them evidence and say, I think that, you're doing a fantastic job of underlining evidence and underlining keywords based on your comprehension goal. And you've consistently been meeting your goal now for 3 weeks. I think it's time to move on to something different or to up your goal. So giving them that feedback to know, like, this is what I think, and it's okay to tell them what you think as long as they are still in the driver's seat. But to give them that feedback and let them know that, this is what you think, that you are on the right track, or maybe you're not so much on the right track, and to kind of guide them and help them out, okay? All right, ready for number 10? Number 10 is an easy one, but I had to throw it in. It's to make sure you celebrate. Celebrate every goal, every single goal. And I don't mean that you're spending money or spending, time doing crazy things with your kids, but doing something by like sending home a note, attaching this goal setting sheet with a little certificate that says, congratulations, your child met their goal. And, or writing them a little note and putting it in an envelope and leaving it on their desk, or writing on their desk. We can use dry erase markers and actually write on their desk. And that way there's something special for them when they come in during the morning. Just little things that are going to make them smile and celebrate the progress that they are making, because they need to know that they're doing this for the right reasons, to build their confidence, to build their knowledge, to build themselves up as a thinker, as a learner, as a student, and as a human. And if we're not taking the time to celebrate that, then why are we doing it? So make sure that you take the time to celebrate. All right. All right, friends, I have loved going through all 10 of these. I would love it if you would comment below real quick for me and let me know which out of the 10 you think are your favorite. Maybe which one was your biggest aha? Which one did you like the most? Let me know below in the comments. You don't have to tell me the numbers 1 through 10. Just tell me in your own words what you think. If you would like, I also have this information in a blog post ready to go. So let me know if you would like the link to that blog post. Just tell me the words goal setting blog post below, and I will comment back with the link. That way you get it directly. Okay? Don't forget, at the end of the video, I will be commenting to the link with the freebies. You are going to get your action step page. You are going to get your realistic versus unrealistic activity. You are going to get your guiding questions matrix. And I threw in 2 others that I didn't even mention. Goal setting conference page in case you need one. And then a quick little 4-square reflection goal setting kind of mesh together activity that you could do with your kids. So all of that is your freebie tonight. You will want to grab the link as soon as the video is over. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ahas, additions, extensions, add-ons, whatever that you would like to share, please make sure you share them below. I love hearing what you all have to say. And thank you so much for joining. And I will see you next week for another episode in Adventures of Comprehension. Bye, friends.